Hello and welcome to the newsroom breaking this hour. Let's start with the top story. The Kremlin has dismissed European claims that President Vladimir Putin wants to rebuild the Soviet Union or is preparing to attack a NATO member state, responding to comments by German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said that the idea Putin aims to restore the USSR is not true and not respectful to Russia's international partners. Merz had argued that Putin intends to bring back what he called the old Soviet Union, warning that Europe must be ready to defend itself. Western leaders have long said that if Russia wins its war in Ukraine, it could eventually turn its attention to NATO countries. Now, Putin has repeatedly denied these accusations, saying attacking NATO would be irrational given the alliance's military superiority. Now, while the Russian president has called the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union the biggest geopolitical catastrophe of the 20th century, Kremlin insists he has no intention of recreating it. Peskov said the suggestion that Russia is preparing to strike NATO is complete stupidity, accusing European officials of misunderstanding Russia's position and fueling necessary fears. Now, moving on, as per reports, NATO countries have ramped up military surveillance in the Arctic, according to Russian Navy Chief Admiral Alexander Moiseev. Moiseev noted a rise in activity from US, British and Canadian anti-submarine aircraft operating from Iceland and alleged NATO plans to deploy surveillance drones in Finland. Moiseev claimed that these actions aim to limit Russia's operations in the region, which is vital for both strategic and resource-driven reasons. Now, NATO has expressed concerns over Russian submarine activity near critical undersea infrastructure, leading to missions like Baltic Sentry to safeguard these areas. Russian officials, including President Putin and Foreign Minister Lavrov, have insisted that Russia is defending its Arctic interests in response to NATO's increased presence, emphasizing their right to protect their territorial claims and resources in the region. Now, the Russian Defense Ministry says that Russian forces have captured Ostapsk in Ukraine's Dnipro region as the war's front line continues to shift across the east. Moscow says the advance marks a new foothold beyond areas it claims to have annexed. Russia has been announcing regular gains since shifting its campaign to the Donbass after failing to take Kyiv in early 2022. Ukraine has not acknowledged the loss of territory in Dnipro, but says that its forces have recaptured 3 villages in the Donetsk region, including Mikhailivka and Zapiahai and Volodymyrivka. Kyiv says the fighting around the Pokrovsk remains intense, calling the situation truly difficult. Ukraine's military intelligence also reported a joint operation to retake another village in Novo-Mikhailivka. And Brazilian Senator Flavio Bolsonaro says that his decision to run for president in 2026 is now irreversible, putting an end to speculation that he might step aside. The senator made the remarks after visiting his father, former President Jair Bolsonaro, who is currently serving a 27-year sentence for plotting a coup against after losing the 2022 election to President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Flavio said his father fully supports his candidacy, telling him, in his words, "We will not turn back." Now, the announcement surprised markets, which had been betting on a more seasoned market-friendly figure such as Sao Paulo, the governor Tarcísio de Freitas, who is emerging as the unified conservative challenger. But on Monday, Freitas publicly endorsed Flavio, signaling that the right wing may now consolidate behind him. Flavio Bolsonaro said he understands the initial market reaction, noting concerns that President Lula could remain in power for another 4 years. But he believes his campaign will gain traction as he begins building alliances and presenting himself as a main alternative to the leftist leader in the 2026 race. Listen in.
Para ele do ânimo generalizado da nossa militância que estava de cabeça baixa, estava angustiada, sem o norte para seguir. Agora o presidente Bolsonaro deu esse norte. Então falei que essa candidatura é irreversível, palavras dele, não vamos voltar atrás. Mas com eles ali, conscientes de que essa candidatura é para valer, não é balão de ensaio, não tem volta. Mais uma vez faço aqui o apelo de público para que eles caminhem com a gente desde o início.
Não é mais negociável, senador?
O que o mercado quis sinalizar com isso? A preocupação de mais 4 anos de Lula. E eles estão cobertos de razão. Não tem possibilidade do Brasil ficar vivo com mais um governo desse, desgastado, analógico, um governo que persegue a oposição, só pensa em aumentar imposto a todo momento.
And my colleague Rema Hans is joining us for more insights. Rema, what more can you tell us about Senator Flavio Bolsonaro's presidential bid?
Brazil politics. Of course, Flavio's announcement for the presidential candidacy ends a lot of speculation over whether he would be running for the presidential race. In fact, until Sunday, he mentioned that he might be stepping aside for elections. But after the meeting with his father, now convicted father, Jair Bolsonaro, the decisions have changed around and he has confirmed his candidacy. Now, the investors are not as pleased by the decision as they were expecting a more market-friendly face, a more business-oriented face to come out and represent the country, represent the party. For the stability of the region, and they were expecting that he would, the governor of Sao Paulo would get more support from the party. However, with Flavio's announcement, there's a lot of uncertainty whether he will get support in the following elections in 2026. Now, Flavio has served many years in both legislative offices, national as well as state. However, his past has been somewhat tainted by his involvement in a Racadenia scheme, which for misuse of public funds. Of course, the court have mostly freed him of these allegations, but his association with this scandal will very unlikely go unnoticed in the 2026 elections. And given his father's conviction and the legal baggage attached to the now family name, Flavio's bid will test whether Bolsonarism still will retain enough support in 2026.
All right, thank you for your input there, Rema. And with that, viewers, we move on to news from Australia. Viewers, Australia has enacted a world-first ban on social media used for children and teenagers under 16, causing millions of accounts to be deactivated. Now, from today, platforms including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube and Snapchat, TikTok are required to remove accounts held by users under 16 and prevent them from creating new ones. Platforms that don't comply face fines of up to $49.5 million. While most platforms have agreed to follow the law, X, which was formerly Twitter, is still in discussions with Australian authorities. The ban has sparked mixed reactions from parents, with some supporting it as a necessary step to protect children, while others, including one parent who has taught their child to bypass age restrictions, are frustrated by the policy. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese defended the law linking it to age restrictions on alcohol, saying the law sends a clear message about protecting young people online. The law has already drawn international attention, with several countries, including Malaysia and the European Union, signaling interest in similar bans. The E-Safety Commissioner is now monitoring how platforms are enforcing the ban and addressing potential challenges such as circumvention and appeals. U.S. Secretary of
less harm for young Australia.
And moving on, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is calling for an immediate end to the renewed fighting along the Cambodia-Thailand border. In a post on X, Rubio said the United States is concerned about the ongoing violence and urges both sides to create hostilities, cease hostilities and protect civilians and return to the de-escalation measures laid out in the Kuala Lumpur Peace Accords. At least 10 people have been killed since Monday, 7 Cambodian civilians and 3 Thai soldiers, while Bangkok reports 29 soldiers wounded. Cambodia says that 20 of its civilians have also been injured. The latest round of clashes began early Monday after Thailand accused Cambodia of launching a border attack that left 1 Thai soldier dead, prompting Thai F-16 airstrikes and a rapid military response. Now, thousands of residents on both sides of the border have been displaced as tensions escalate between the two Southeast Asian neighbors. US President Donald Trump on Monday urged both countries to fully honor the ceasefire commitments they agreed to in October, while Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim has also called for restraint to prevent further bloodshed. Now, moving on, Thailand has told the United States that the threat of tariffs should not be used to pressure it into restarting talks with Cambodia or halting renewed border fighting. Thai Foreign Minister Sihasak Phuangketkeow has now said that it is up to Phnom Penh to take steps to de-escalate the conflict. Hostilities reignited on Monday after weeks of simmering tension, killing at least 12 people and forcing hundreds of thousands to flee border areas, with both nations accusing the other of firing the first shots. In July, following fierce ceasefire clashes, US President Donald Trump intervened, warning that negotiations with Washington over lower trade tariffs would put on hold unless the fighting stopped. A Trump administration official has reiterated that the president expects both countries to honor their commitments to end the conflict. Sihasak added that the current situation is not conducive to third-party mediation and stressed that Cambodia must show sincerity and make the first move to restart dialogue and reduce tension along the border. Listen in.
We don't think tariffs should be used to pressure Thailand to get back to the joint declaration, to get back to a dialogue process. No. I think the situation regarding Thailand and Cambodia has to be resolved on the basis of its own dynamics. And tariffs, they're part of the trade negotiations. It should be confined to trade negotiations.
And Russia's top general Valery Gerasimov says that Moscow's forces are advancing along the entire front line in Ukraine, focusing on encircling Ukrainian troops in Mirhorod. He claims Russia has taken over 30% of the town's buildings. He also mentioned that Russia's capture of Pokrovsk is an important step toward taking the whole of Donbas region. Listen to what the Chief of General Staff of Russian Armed Forces, Valery Gerasimov, had to say.
Войска объединенной группировки продолжают наступление практически на всех направлениях. В ходе доклада Верховному главнокомандующему 1 декабря об освобождении Красноармейска Верховный главнокомандующий обратил внимание и поставил задачу по разгрому подразделений противника в районах восточнее Красноармейска и в Димитрове. На сегодняшний день соединения и воинские части 2-й армии освободили населенные пункты Ровное, Рог и Гнатовку, примыкающих к Красноармейску с восточной стороны.
However, Ukraine denies the claim, saying its forces still hold parts of Mirnohad and are resisting Russian attacks, forcing Moscow to pay a high price for relatively small gains. Russia currently controls nearly a fifth of Ukraine, including Crimea, most of Luhansk and Donetsk, and parts of Kherson and Zaporizhia and other regions. Earlier, Russian President Putin has warned Russia will take full control of the Donbas region unless Ukrainian forces withdraw. Kyiv has rejected the demand, vowing to defend its territory. And Israeli forces carried out a raid in the Al-Amhari refugee camp near Ramallah, resulting in injuries and detentions. At least 2 Palestinians, including a 13-year-old boy, were injured by Israeli gunfire to the legs, according to the Palestinian Red Crescent. The raid, which was carried out by an Israeli Special Forces unit under army protection, sparked clashes with local residents. Several homes were raided during the operation. The raid in Al-Amari was part of wider Israeli military operations across the West Bank on Tuesday, with at least 40 Palestinians detained in locations including Hebron, Nablus, and Bethlehem. The Israeli military has not provided specific details about the objective of the raid, but usually describes such operations as intel-based counter-terrorism operations aimed at apprehending suspects or confiscating weapons. And moving on now, a Hamas official has stated that the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire cannot move forward until Israel halts what it calls violations of the agreement. Hossam Badran, a member of Hamas's political bureau, told a fast that the ceasefire, which began on October 10, will not progress as long as Israel continues to evade its commitments. Now, Badran called on mediators to pressure Israel to honor the terms of the truce. The second phase of the ceasefire is supposed to involve the deployment of an international force and disarmament of Hamas. However, this phase cannot begin until Hamas completes the handover of all hostages, though it still holds the body of one hostage, Ranjwili, claiming it has been unable to locate him. While Israel has carried out airstrikes in Gaza, it maintains that these actions were retaliatory, targeting militants who attacked Israeli troops stationed along the Yellow Line, a position the Israeli Defense Forces withdrew from at the start of the truce. In a separate development, Israel announced that it will reopen the Al-Anbar crossing, which connects the occupied West Bank with Jordan, to allow humanitarian aid trucks to reach Gaza. This marks the first time since late September that aid from Jordan will be permitted to enter Gaza. Israeli officials stated that all trucks will undergo security inspections and be escorted to ensure safety. In fact, the reopening of the border crossing comes as part of broader efforts to address humanitarian needs in Gaza amid ongoing conflict. And that's that. Up next, viewers, the Lithuania government has declared a state of emergency in response to balloons from Belarus that have disrupted aviation. The government has also asked Parliament to authorize the military to work alongside police and border guards in managing the situation. If Parliament approves, the military will be granted powers to restrict access to certain areas, conduct searches of vehicles and individuals, and detain those suspected of crimes or resisting authorities. The ongoing balloon incidents, which have caused multiple closures of Vilnius airport, are believed by Lithuania to be part of a hybrid attack by Belarus, allegedly involving smugglers using the balloons to transport cigarettes. Belarus has denied any involvement in the balloon operations and has insisted that Lithuania is making provocations, including the alleged use of a drone to drop extremist material, a claim that Lithuania denies. Listen in.
Vienas esminių privalumų paskelbus ekstremaliąją situaciją sąveikos su Lietuvos kariuomenė didinimas. Galiojant ekstremaliai situacijai, kariams gali būti suteikiamos specialiosios teisės, dėl ko jų veikimas kartu su Vidaus reikalų ministerijos tarnybomis, o taip pat ir savarankiškai tampa efektyvesnis. Legalizuojamas kariuomenės dalyvavimas ir specialiųjų įgaliojimų taikymas neutralizuojant oro erdvės pažeidimus.
And a Delhi fire has torn through a 7-story office building in Indonesia's capital, Jakarta, leaving at least 22 people dead. Authorities say that the blaze started around midday on the first floor before quickly spreading upward. Many employees were inside at the time, some returning from lunch, others working. Fire crews managed to extinguish the flames and continue searching the building for additional victims. The office belongs to Terra Drone Indonesia, a local unit of Japan's Terra Drone Corporation. Television footage showed firefighters rescuing survivors from upper floors and carrying bodies out in bags, while some workers escaped down portable ladders. Police say that the focus now is on the evacuation and cooling hotspots as investigation begins. And the death toll in the fire that ripped through 7 high-rise towers in Hong Kong in late November has now risen to 160 after police completed the final stage of search operation. The blaze that tore through a high-rise apartment complex last month was the world's deadliest residential building blazed since 1980. Now, the identities of 120 out of the 160 dead have been found via DNA or fingerprint testing. Authorities earlier said the blaze at the estate, which was undergoing major renovations, was likely made worse by the use of protective netting on its scaffolding that did not meet fire resistance standard. The netting, as well as foam boards attached to the windows during the work, contributed to the spread of the fire, as per the final authorities' statement. Amid the ongoing investigation into the fire, police have arrested 15 people from various construction companies for manslaughter and another 6 people in connection to fire alarms that failed to sound. Moving on now, Congo's President Felix Tshisekedi has accused Rwanda of violating a US-brokered peace deal in eastern Congo just days after signing new agreements in Washington. Tshisekedi has spoken to lawmakers while Rwanda has yet to respond. Let's listen in.
Malgré notre bonne foi et l'accord récemment entériné, force est de constater que le Rwanda viole déjà ses engagements. Au lendemain même de la signature des unités des forces de défense du Rwanda ont conduit et appuyé des attaques à l'arme lourde tirées depuis la ville rwandaise de Bugarama, provoquant de lourds dégâts humains et matériels, notamment dans les localités de Kaziba, Katogota et Lubarika au sud Kivu, rompant ainsi le cessez-le-feu.
Over the weekend, M23 rebels backed by Rwanda seized the village of Luwangi near the Burundi border. Congolese troops clashed with local defense forces in Sangi, where at least 36 civilians, including children, were reportedly killed. The U.S. State Department warned Rwanda to prevent further escalation and stressed the importance of implementing the peace deal. Officials say President Trump is monitoring the situation closely, emphasizing that actions on the ground must align with the commitments that were made. The situation remains tense, with deadly clashes threatening the fragile stability in Congo's mineral-rich east. And up next, supporters of Beninese President Patrice Talon have gathered in Cotonou for a sit-in denouncing the attempted coup a day earlier. Now, residents held signs reading "No more coups in Benin" as organizers led chants condemning what they described as imposters and murderers behind Sunday's events. Benin's government has said that the mutinying soldiers tried to seize Talon and abducted 2 senior military officials who were released the following morning. Authorities said that Nigerian fighter jets carried out airstrikes to help thwart the attempt after Abuja destroyed air and ground forces to support Benin. Let's listen in to what some residents have said.
Cette institution travaille à l'intégration des États. Et lorsqu'un pays membre est en danger, il est de bon ton que cette communauté puisse intervenir. Et je pense que c'est un peu dans la même dynamique que ce qui était proposé au Niger et qui a été mal interprété. Et donc je pense qu'il n'y a pas péril à la demeure, au contraire. N'eût été d'ailleurs l'intervention du Nigeria, Dieu seul sait où nous serons aujourd'hui. Je pense que cette solidarité entre pays ouest-africains est à encourager.
C'est le peuple tout entier qui est concerné. Et nous ne voulons plus jamais de prise de pouvoir par la force au Bénin. Nous ne voulons plus jamais de coup d'État au Bénin. Nous ne voulons plus jamais de prise d'otage de nos fondamentaux, de nos acquis démocratiques. C'est pour ça que nous nous sommes mobilisés massivement pour dire non à l'ennemi, comme un seul homme, pour témoigner notre soutien au chef de l'État, Patrice Talon, notre soutien aux forces armées du Bénin et notre soutien à tout le peuple béninois.
And that's a wrap on the newsroom. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates from around the world.